Hey everybody, Julie Murphy here. I have spent the last 25 plus years being a financial planner, and we either work things out and we act it out through our money, through our health, and our relationships. And today, Rachel Cronin is joining us because I have found that if we hear stories from people whose lives that thrive when they've completely jumped off the ledge and shifted their reality, even though financially you didn't necessarily know how you were going to do it, everything falls into alignment. We just have to trust to get past that fear. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like, and notification bell. Why? Because we're going to help you get to a life that you absolutely love. Thanks, Rachel, for coming on with me today.
Thank you. Yeah, thank
You
you.
are the woman on top of the mountain.
That's right. Yes, yes. I live completely off the grid on top of a mountain here in the Colorado Mountain Wild, and I love it. I'm up there with my husband, my two kids. We have a couple cats, and yeah, that's our lifestyle.
It's so funny because I think a lot of people have this notion of when you say that, how you're supposed to look, like
Mm.
dreadlocks and a ski cap and
Yeah.
not with waxed eyebrow. You know what I mean? Like you're not like a mountain girl look. And you just sit there and go, you're a what? Because my whole noodle is like sitting here going, okay, tell me more. I'm really curious because my perception is not necessarily reality and I want to know more.
Yeah.
Right. And so tell us about like who you were before you decided to live off the grid.
Oh yeah, that's a good story. So I've been off the grid now almost 4 years, and
Mm.
it's not something I ever thought I'd ever do, to be honest. I was never on my vision board. I never thought one day I'll live off the grid. I lived in the typical suburban neighborhood in the cul-de-sac, housewife lifestyle. I have two kids, so taking them to preschool, going to
Mhm.
Costco, that was my lifestyle, and I liked it. But I always felt like there was something missing. I
Mm.
found we were living for the weekends. We were watching a lot of Netflix, and it got old really fast.
Yeah.
And even in our neighborhood, we didn't have an HOA, so I love organics. I love the idea of being self sufficient. And so even on our small neighborhood scale, we had backyard chickens, and we were trying to garden. It wasn't really doing very well in our tiny postage stamp backyard.
Right.
And so in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, we should get more land, one day. One day we can get more land. And so I am a
And I
vision.
have to say, everybody, that is what I always talk about because I talk about that people are in different categories: the poor, the debtors, the dreamers, accumulators, and then there's rich but empty. And anyone who isn't considered wealthy or rich, they're waiting for that one day. Well, once I get here, then I will go live my life that I want to dream of. And it's like, all you have is today. Tomorrow's not guaranteed to anybody. And I challenge people. So I'm glad to hear that you're talking about, well, one day we'll have more land.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
keep
that
going. I just wanted to interject here
was,
because I find that so many people think it's this linear line and it's
yeah.
not.
And I totally agree. And that was our story. And for me, I am a vision board type person. I like having, even if I'm not sure exactly the when, I like knowing the what.
Yeah.
And so for my vision board mind, I was dragging my husband to like appointments to look at properties because I didn't even know how much land I wanted. I didn't know,
Right.
do I want a half acre? Do I want 5? Do I want 8? So we looked at 5 acre lots. I felt like that looked small. We looked at a
Mm.
16 acre lot, really sloped. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I don't know if I want it so sloped. So I kind of took about 6 months of this exploratory, non-serious, did not get a realtor. I was totally
Right.
not committed, just like curious. So whoever showed up from the internet from our inquiry was who showed
Right.
us the land. So we're just looking, trying to get our feelers out. And then I came across this 35-acre property in the mountains in the zip code that I dreamed of living in. And
Mm.
it was beautiful from the photos. And I was like, no way. But, for research purposes, we should go look at it. So we set up
Right.
the little online appointment, and this 18-year-old real estate trainee showed up to show us the land.
Mm.
And my husband wasn't too excited about the bottom half. He didn't even want to go to the top. But I was like, let's go to the top. We're already out here. And then when we both went to the top, it just felt totally different. We saw a spectacular mountain view, city view. I'm very metaphysical, spiritual. There's like raw crystal deposits everywhere. And when we walked out on the top, it really felt kind of almost sacred. I was like, wow, this is something special. And we have this big rock pavilion, this big giant rock outcropping. We walked out over there. And then my husband turns to the 18-year-old and was like, so if we buy this property, we would own all these rocks. And he's like, well, and he's like, we'll take it. And so our 1-day plan became a 24-hour plan.
Wow.
And we didn't have savings for property. Literally, we just it was just
okay. Can you say that again for everybody? You did not have savings for property. This again is another mental block that all of us have, that we think that we need to achieve something and then we can go have it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, so can we dig there for just a little bit? So you didn't have it. So it's like, so
No.
what stories were going in your head? Because I'm sure, here's the other thing I wrote down as you were talking. Like, I can only imagine what your parents were saying, your other family members were saying, going, she's lost her rocker. You know, going, she's taking my grandbabies up to a mountaintop. What are you doing? Right?
We heard all the things.
And you have no money to buy the land.
Exactly. Yeah. No, because again, this was a Sunday plan, like one day,
Yeah.
But then we're like, oh my gosh, there's a mountain view, there's the city view. It's 15 minutes away. So it's remote but close. Our perfect zip code. And I'm again, I love the spiritual metaphysical side. The land was at 7,777 feet. So I'm like, lucky 7, there's Chris. Okay, it's like waiting for me. So we committed
and you know, your inner knowing just knows that this is it.
Yeah, and you can't see because of my jacket, but I get my chill meter going on when I talk about it.
Oh, that's
so
beautiful.
Chills, and yeah, so that was it. And then I've never bought land before. The house we were in was the first house I'd ever bought. Never bought land before, never built a house before. So it was all a bunch of stuff I didn't know. And I think that's both good in this story, because if you don't know what you don't know, you just keep going.
Right?
You don't know what you don't know.
Totally.
So I didn't know what I didn't know. And so we committed to buying the property. We had it appraised, put in an offer. And I didn't know this, but land has a 60-day close. So I'm like, perfect. We have 60 days to come up with the money for the land. And so I used that as our timeline. And
can I ask how much that was that you needed to come up with?
So we needed the land. We needed at least $45,000 in 60 days.
And you had none. So this is where I want people to really hear this. You didn't have it. But this is where, when it is right, I'm always talking about, the subtitle to my first book is called Building Wealth from the Inside Out. And this is exactly it. It's like, you knew this was the right thing. You knew that this is where you wanted to be. And when you build it from the inside out, everything shows up to support it.
It's amazing. I felt like I was in I understand, because I've dived into the flow state and meditation and all the, and so I pulled out all the stops, right? I'm like, all the things I need to do. I've dedicated, I did all of my own personal manifesting meditation practices that I feel like are really good for me. Maybe others have different strategies, but that's what I dove into. And also taking inspired action. So we're like, okay, well, what can we do? What's the next logical thing we can do? And we thought, well, we would much rather live in the mountains, and our biggest asset is our house. So we thought, okay, we'll sell our house.
Right.
So that was our plan. And so to manifest or create the income that we would need, we couldn't just sell our house. We'd have to make some improvements. So during the 60-day window, we're renovating
let's just add a couple extra layers, right?
Yeah, so we're renovating our house. And we had the chicken. So I changed the chicken coop into this shed. And so it's so much work. I'm all the time. And the whole entire time I'm painting things. I'm painting the trim. We had orange oak. So I'm painting it white. I'm all doing my chanting stuff. I'm all right. I'm doing all the things. I'm visualizing living on this mountain. I'm visualizing the type of house we're going to build, and just that's all. That was kind of my focus. And then when we put our house on the market, it sold in less than 24 hours. And
Mm.
what's interesting about this is I thought in my mind, because the property is 7,777 feet, I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if we earned 77,000? I just kind of put it out there. And honestly, that wouldn't even make any sense because we couldn't list our house for high enough to make that much money. We
Mhm.
couldn't do it. It wouldn't make any sense. But because of our market and then the improvements we made in the house, we got multiple offers. And the offer that we chose netted us $77,000.
Okay, so I'd like to. I'm going to. This is not just a Rachel story. So I want to. I want to reiterate this to people because when I had my second child, she's now 11 years old, and I sat there and go, I need to double the size of my house, but I don't want to pay any more money per month. And I was like, I'm not really sure how that happens, but because I was building my business and having babies and now being the only income provider for the family. And I was like, how do I do this? And literally, I found out that my neighbor, because I live in a high rise, and my neighbor, who has the best view of the entire Lake Michigan here in Chicago, and they went into foreclosure. And I had the cash to pay. I got it for $99,000, which is
Wow.
nothing.
Wow.
And I
Yeah.
was the only person that showed up to the auction to buy the place. So I paid cash, doubled the size of my place. So now I'm in almost 4,000 square feet as opposed to 2,000
That's
and
amazing.
doubled. So you just have to hold the intention of what it is that you want to create
Hmm.
and then allow everything to actually come up. And, thank you for sharing that because a lot of people are like, well, yeah, Jewel, but you're a money person. And that just kind of like fell in place with you. And I'm like, no, I am telling you that this is how it works. You have to hold the container for what you want to create and then create it.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
it.
yeah. And
Hmm.
it's amazing just all the things that lined up for that because it was literally the perfect buyer. And because again, our someday plan was happening like immediately within 60 days,
Right.
there's a lot to sort out because
Yep.
we had an RV that was gifted to us just a few months beforehand. So it was gifted to us. It needed a lot of work. We had to pretty much gut it. It had some mold, so we had to gut it and kill the mold and rebuild it from the ground up. But we could customize it. So it was like the plan formulated itself from the resources that came into our experience
Hmm.
at the exact time. So we're like, we
Right.
could do the RV, we could sell our house. And this specific buyer, as part of their offer, not only was it well over asking to create the gap to that amount in our mind that we thought might be fun to have, but they also rented our house back to us for free for a month as part of their offer. So we had an extra 30 days to
Right.
downsize into the RV because we were in
Mm.
3,000 square feet to just under 180 square feet is
It's a
what
big
we went
difference.
into. So yeah, it was just like this, all the things happening, and we show up on the land, and we're like, okay, now what?
Then you sit there and go, okay, now I manifested it all. What's next? Because
That's
I'm
yeah.
sure, like, some of the things that were going through my head as I heard you telling the story was like, well, what about your kid's school? And what about like
Mhm.
you're on top of a mountain? What about a toilet? What about, like you think of
Mhm.
like logistical things, you're kind of going, yeah, okay, that's the next thing I need to figure out.
That's exactly what it was. I found myself, and I have a blog on our website, City to Gritty, and I found myself suddenly living off the grid.
Mm,
So it
right.
wasn't like I was exactly seeking out living off grid. Off grid found us is a part of
Yeah.
our story because we wanted the land and we are going to do whatever it took to live in that environment. And so it was one thing at a time. So I think in the back of my mind, I realized that, okay, we don't have power because my husband got a generator. We're not going to have water because we got these water totes and we were filling them up. And so I think in the back of my mind, but it wasn't until I got up there that I realized, like, no, I'm living off the grid. Like, okay, because literally, like my past, I got into modeling in my early 20s. I did beauty pageants for Miss
Mm,
USA. Very much, I'd never been camping. I'd never stayed in an
no
RV.
dreadlocks.
No dreadlocks. No, never. And so then I'm like, how am I gonna shave my legs? And I'm like, oh,
Right? Like
yeah.
you think about these things and you go, Oh, I didn't really understand how that one was going to work out, but you followed your inner knowing.
Oh, that's my husband.
Hello.
Hi.
And yeah, and so then it's kind of just figuring it out along the way with
Right.
all right, well, let's see, we're dedicated to this. We had a pre-approval for a construction loan, so we're like, there's our budget for that. Let's see how fast we can keep the RV situation temporary and focus on the house, and then learning how to build in a place nothing is there, like in a place never been built before, on top of a mountain, no power, no water, like complete raw property, which is I didn't realize how difficult that was.
Yeah, it's a whole other different list.
Yeah, yeah, and the whole other different thing to start focusing your awareness and focusing your attention on to start accomplishing those things. So it's this multi-phase marathon race that I found myself in, and yeah, now I'm approaching
one step at a time, right?
Yeah.
So now that you're there for 4 years, what do you feel?
That's a good question. Sometimes I feel like Tony Stark. I'm not gonna lie, because of all the things that we've created. So Tony Stark made the Iron Man suit in a cave.
Right.
And so I use that a lot to help when I realize, okay, I'm living on raw mountain property, and I have been able to accomplish so many little things. Like I'm working with an engineering firm. I'm working at things I just had no idea that I would need the skill sets for, with bridge engineering, road construction, road engineering. Learning about, we found out our land was a habitat for the Mexican spotted owl, which is a threatened species. So learning how to
I read that on your website.
Yeah, and then how to build sustainably with protecting the wildlife, and just all these things where if I was back in my house in that cul-de-sac and I was presented with the list of things that I'd have to learn and the things that I'd have to grow through, and then learn that I thought I'd be in the RV for 6 months, but little did I know I'd be in the RV for 3.5 years. If I knew all that in advance, I probably would have talked myself out of it. To be totally honest, would have been like, no.
It's
But
kind of like giving birth to a baby, right? If they actually told you how that, like, how it happens, but they don't tell you some of the parts that you're going, I would never have done that if I would have known that that's how that actually occurs.
And then, but when you're in labor, there's no going back. It's like
none, just like the mountaintop.
My favorite quote is by Vince Lombardi, and he said, "The man on top of the mountain did not fall there." And I love that quote because everyone on top of the mountain chose to be there. They fought to be there. They climbed to be there. They went through the weather and the obstacles to be there. And that's what it really takes to do something that's never been done before, to live in a place no one has ever lived before.
Right.
It's going to take a certain work ethic and a certain amount of grit. And that's how I'm feeling about it now, is I'm looking at it as I've really transformed as a person. And I've always had this vision of the life that I would want to have, of having abundance, having financial abundance, this abundance freedom mindset. And I never imagined that the thing that would be the catalyst for that is, oh, we should have more land. And then following through on that tidbit of inspiration, because I feel like I got those thoughts at the same time as that property was listed. And then just following through on those inspiration things, because growing up, I had a crazy childhood. I moved around a lot. I moved over 50 times, lived in 19 different states, 13 different public schools by the time I graduated high school. And so I had this foundation of inconsistency, no real home. I'm not from anywhere. And so I feel on the root level, I was craving a forever home, like, and a place to be from and a place to really put down my roots. And so it's kind of interesting how that desire manifested into owning a mountain and creating not just like a foundation for myself and for my kids, but you get a mountain for your foundation.
So, how would you, I'm curious as to how there are a couple buzzwords that you said, how you define abundance. One of the words that I heard you say was a freedom mindset. So, when I talked about people being that they're poor, debtors, dreamers, accumulators, and rich but empty. And then there's the embodiment of what I call real wealth. And you nailed it. I always say when a person embodies real wealth, they have a profound sense of freedom. And
Mhm.
you just said that.
Mhm.
And can you talk about that? Like that's until you feel that yourself in your own life, you have no concept what real freedom really actually is.
Mhm.
Can you talk to
Yeah.
that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. That is my definition of abundance is freedom. And that's how I
Mm,
feel when I walk out on the land and I look at our views, everything, and just knowing that this is my spot in the world. This
yeah,
is me, and the possibilities are endless.
right,
What kind of house do I want to build? Or now I'm expanding into creating a personal growth themed outdoor adventure campus. So we'll have
right,
our little section, but then I want to invite others out here to learn and dive into personal growth because that's the only thing that got me to the freedom mindset, to be honest, was personal growth. It happened
mm,
before everything else. And then now it's
right,
kind of happening at the same time as a lot of things as I dive into different elements of personal growth and then seeing that come into an experience or kind of manifest itself into something. And that's really the heart of it is personal
right,
growth. Because without
right.
that, you're never going to figure out what freedom means to you or what abundance means to you or what's going to help you feel unstuck. Because I think that's also part of it is freedom is also not feeling stuck because
Mm,
feeling stuck is the worst feeling ever because you feel like, oh, I can't do this. Or there's a lot of things where you feel like
right.
you dive
Yep.
down into different things like, oh, but
Well, and
those
I
are
feel like we create these patterns in our lives, and you can people can certainly watch my other videos where I talk about the subconscious mind and stuff like that.
Mhm,
But like financially, we feel stuck because of the debt that we have. I
mhm,
had somebody tell me one time I sold my home and I bought my freedom. And I was
mm,
like, "Oh, fascinating."
yeah.
And your story is somewhat like that as well. You sold your home and you bought your freedom.
That's
Right?
true. Yeah,
And you
yeah.
found your freedom. And in that, I feel like in life we have once we become adults, we have lost this sense of adventure. And I find that if I'm catching somebody pre-retired, if you will, like if they're already in their, 50s, I'm trying to get them to like seek out the new adventure so that when they retire, they don't actually just get sick and die.
Mhm,
Because you hit the nail on the head when you're talking about that. It's what did you say, the personal growth you're learning along the way.
mhm,
And why is it that we as humans don't think that that's possibility? Like we don't necessarily have to follow this traditional path. The path to follow is your inner knowing,
mhm.
and to wake yourself up, and no matter how that package looks, and start to, I always like to call it, let your freak flag fly.
Yeah,
Whatever that is, like me bringing in these esoteric concepts into the world of finance, right? Like a lot of my colleagues go, "Oh, that's cute, Jewel." And I'm like going, "Man, I'm more educated and more successful than," and I'm like, "Cute? Like seriously? You're
mhm.
saying it's," but that's okay, because that's not the way they plug into finance. It's just the way I know to plug into finance,
Yeah.
and developing it all along the way. And so what do you feel like is the next part of your new adventure? So because that is part of it, right? It's like, well, the first adventure was you realize you're in an RV for 3.5 years, right? Like you're going,
Yeah,
well, that was the next part of the adventure I didn't plan on.
yep.
I saw on your website that you're building other places to come for people to stay up on the mountain,
Mhm.
right?
Yes, yeah, so the most immediate thing is building our house, up on our little house. I have, like, this big vision, so we'll have this little house that we're building now, and then I'd love to build, like, another house for us. This will become the guest house for the future big house, but
Hmm.
and then also what's amazing about that is this design is a custom design. It's an A-frame, which I love because A-frames are it's a triangle and the triangle is the strongest shape in nature. The
Yep.
triangle draws its strength from within, which is
Yep.
the whole theme of this project. And so
Right.
the same design that we're working with Compass Architecture, it's all glass and steel, which are good energetic things. I'm
Yep.
building this whole thing around an energy conscious and spiritual and just helping others feel better. And then so
Hmm.
that same cabin we're going to duplicate in 9 other sections of our land down by, we have a stream, so we'll have some cabins down there by the stream, and then we'll have some a couple acres away from us, so you have a mountain view similar to the view that we have, and then we have the peak of the mountain and 200 feet beyond. So I want to do 3 more at the very top, so you'll have a waterfront view, a mountain view or a cloud view, because from
Oh.
diving into different personal growth, environment makes a huge difference in how you
Mhm.
heal. Some respond really well to water, some need the mountains, some need the clouds. And so depending on the different areas that you want to dive into
That's
during
beautiful.
your experience at Cronin Mountain, then you can choose your environment. And I'm partnering with different businesses and healers and personal growth workshops where you get to enjoy nature, but then also combine that with the power of personal growth, where maybe
That's
you're going for a
beautiful.
hike, so you're moving your body, but you're also moving your personality and you're moving your soul. And I feel like that is what my full circle journey has come to, with
Mm.
remembering who I am. And I feel like that is what my mission is, if you will, of I want to help others not feel the way that I did as a kid, because I grew up feeling very stuck, just moving all the time, being the new kid, no one knowing my name, not knowing my purpose, really just kind of feeling like I'm being ripped around by the world. And then knowing that you don't have to live like that, you can co-create and create your reality. And I think when you pair that with somebody who can guide you, and then you pair that with a beautiful location in nature, you can
Mm.
have breakthroughs.
Well, and I'd like to just mention, like, when I talk about building wealth from the inside out, I'm talking about, it's not a surprise to me when you talked about that early on after all this moving, right? Like you're just learning to you want to be accepted and meld in, and it is not a surprise to me that you went into modeling, because that's something that's outside of yourself
Mhm.
to try to make yourself happy,
Oh, and it totally was, because my parents watched TV all the time. They
right?
watched the Academy Awards, and I that's everything that came out of the TV, I learned from a young age. That's what they put all their focus and attention on. So maybe if I got on TV, like I would be seen, you know?
Right.
And so I that was kind of my subconscious thing, where I thought, "Oh, that'll save me and I'll become like rich and famous and I'll like then I'll have all this money."
Right.
And but it and I had a moderate amount of success doing it, but I didn't know who I was when I was doing it.
Right. Well, and it's again, it's outside of yourself. It's not
Mhm.
in your bones, right?
Yeah.
Like you can tell by the way that you talk, this mountain is in your bones. Like the whole thing when you're talking about the A-frame and the meaning and the purpose, and like, I always say that I'm a financial healer, and it's because it's really about I always tell people that I'm like, "Oh, I kind of help people birth their souls." And
Yeah.
it's because
Yeah.
we financially get stuck, and then we don't know how to then get, even if you have the knowing that it's something different, it's a whole other different ball game of how do you jump off the ledge
Mhm.
and do it in a way that you have a safe container to evolve from, right? And because that safety, your level of feeling safe
Mhm.
will actually help you, or if you're not safe, you're going to sabotage yourself. And
Mhm.
so you have to create whatever container it is to make you feel safe, and everybody's measurement of that is different,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know everyone's measurement. And so including myself, like every human being has that. And so your bridge might be shorter, your bridge might be longer, and it's not the end of the journey once you just get on top of the mountain, because you don't
That
know what you don't
exactly.
know.
Now what? Okay, well, now we gotta build a house, and the company kind of birthed everything. I feel like births from the next logical thing in
Mm.
this whole journey. Like, what's the next logical thing? Because when we learned the infrastructure and what it would take to build in a place never been built before, and then I had a couple of people tell me, but I didn't believe it, because I'm like, it'll be different for me. They told me to triple my budget and triple my timeline. I was like, no. But no, it's more like quadruple your budget, quadruple your timeline to
Mm.
build in a place never been built before. And so I was like, okay, I got to go bigger. This can't just be for me. And then realizing how much that environment was a catalyst to my healing just in the span of time. Literally, from living off the grid for the past 4 years, it has completely changed who I am. I look at
Mm.
society in a different way. I look at the city life. I look at consumerism in a different way. I look at
Can you
myself
share
in a
some of
different way.
those thoughts, how that has shifted you?
Well, to be honest, this might be some very esoteric, but I think you get it. But I started looking at the city as this, like the zoo.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Your
human
cage.
habitats.
Yeah.
It's just like, if you think about how would a human thrive, and if you're thinking about like your hamster cage, how would I make my hamster happy? Food, water, a spin wheel, bedding. And I look at neighborhoods where the houses are stacked on top of each other with these tiny little things. And if you sneeze, your neighbor can hear you, and you can't play the piano because your neighbor will hear you, and or whatever it is. And I look at that and I look at human habitats and our what does it mean to truly live? This is what I talked about in my TED talk, is what does it mean to truly live?
Mm-hmm.
Is it living in traffic? Is it living in this tiny little human habitat? Or is it being out in nature and cooking over a campfire? I mean, there's pros and cons to everything. Where
Right.
I'm sitting out there, I'm like cooking over a gas stove or over the campfire. I can hear it's so quiet. I can hear the wings flap of a bird. I never knew birds made sounds. I can I never knew that. I know this is silly, but I literally never knew that the flapping of a wing makes sound. I never
Yeah,
knew
it's so funny that you say that. You know, back when I was doing the combining of the two units here in the construction, my kids have, I call it, they've grown up in a concrete jungle. You
Yeah,
know, I mean,
yeah.
and my nature is I have Lake Michigan right here. Like literally, I'm on the beach. So
Mhm.
I do have nature. I'm not in this like city center, but when we moved into my parents' house in the suburbs for 3 months to get the kitchens gutted and everything, my kids were like, "Mom, what's that noise?" And I was like, "Oh, those are crickets." And they're like, "What
Yeah.
are crickets?" And I was going, "Oh, my kids know seagulls, but they don't know crickets." I was like,
Yeah.
"Wow." Like, and then
Mhm.
all of a sudden they're like, "Mom, what are those things like flashing? Like as it starts to get dark out, the lightning bugs come out."
Aw,
And so they flash
yeah.
and they're like, "Mom, there's things around us that are like flashing." And I was like, "Oh my God, it's lightning bugs."
That's so
So I
cool
can
though.
only imagine being up on a mountaintop, let alone going from the city to the suburbs for my kids. But
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
right. You become so aware of the
It's
harmony of nature, I'll bet.
it's a deep lesson in awareness, and I don't know
Mhm.
if you ever saw Castaway
Oh,
with
yeah.
Tom Hanks, and then he can't figure out that it's like coconuts falling. So I had like moments like that, like, what is that sound? And then it's
Right.
like pine cones falling off the trees. I'm like, oh, okay. Because where I am in
Like,
Colorado,
where's the
there's
tiger?
exactly, well, there's not a lot
Where's
of
the mountain
bugs.
lion?
Yeah, we have mountain lions, bobcats, black bears, raccoons, foxes, stuff like that. And but there's really no bugs. And so the
Mhm.
nights are so quiet where you can hear anything, really. You can hear everything. So I had that moment where I couldn't figure out what a sound was, and then I just stared outside for probably like 45 minutes waiting for the sound to happen again. It was just pine cones falling off the trees. I'm like, okay. Because when you're brand new to an environment, you just don't know. You're like,
Right.
oh my, is that a bear out there? Oh my,
Right.
and I wouldn't go outside. I wouldn't go
That's
outside without
awesome.
shining my light in the trees. Because I'm like, the mountain lions are in the trees. Like, and so I had a lot of fear to overcome.
Yeah.
And now I share this in a blog post, I think, but I went from being terrified of the dark because I've always had this fear of the dark
Oh my
from
God, it's so dark up there.
to not even needing a flashlight during, like, right now it's
Mhm.
a full moon. I don't need a flashlight. I can walk around. I can see in the dark from being
Well, what
afraid
we
of
don't realize is
it.
our eyes actually adjust to it.
They do. Yeah. You don't need
Yeah,
a flashlight. It's like
right.
an avatar. You don't need a flashlight or a torch. You
Exactly.
can see. You can see. Yeah. It's
That's so
powerful.
awesome. Oh my gosh. So, if you were to give any advice to anyone who's watching this of how do they jump off their personal ledge, what would that advice be?
Do it. Don't get out of your
Wow.
head. I would say get out of your head. I think that a lot of us will get stuck in our head. You'll plan your idea to death.
Right? Right?
So
So
you
true.
you like if I planned my idea, if I really understood and did all the research on what I was doing from the very beginning, like, oh my gosh, this little house is going to cost like 4 times as much. Do I want to go from 3,000 square feet to 180? 6 months sounds fine, but can I do it for 3.5 years? If I really planned it to the T, I wouldn't have done it. And this has been the
Right.
catalyst for me. Literally, this transformational journey. I've had opportunities come that I would have never had with being on the TED
Mm,
stage. That would have never happened before.
right.
Never. And it's
Right.
been by saying yes to your idea or yes to that inspiration, and and just doing the next logical thing. It's that simple. Like, what's the next logical thing? Looking at lots. What's the next logical thing? Well, I could sell my house. I could live in this RV I just got. What's the next
Yep.
logical thing? What's the next? And that's it. And it's just kind of like these little things that just stack on top of each other. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is it.
Right. Right. And so I'm curious in terms of like talk to me about like how do you guys find your wherewithal to I mean obviously you can grow your own food, but you know you
Mhm.
think about well you're gonna have snow up on top of that mountain, like you're not growing food then. Like talk to us about like to bridge people to like okay you know you think about your like your kids still go to school or do you now
Mhm.
homeschool them, you know talk to us about some of those more practical things.
For sure.
When
Yeah. So there's a lot of like off grid misconception.
right,
So
right.
pretty much living off the grid means being in charge of your own utilities. So you're in
Hmm.
charge of your own power. We have solar, in charge of your
Right.
own water. Right now we have a cistern. We're working on getting a well, some logistics with getting the well on top of the mountain or the well
And if
drilling.
anyone has never
Mhm.
like when you really dig to the well, the freshness of that water is off the charts in most cases.
I'm so excited. Yes,
It's off
I
the charts.
cannot wait. Yeah, we have a couple neighbors, and our neighbors are several miles away. So it's a new concept for neighbors. They have wells. We have, I think, 3 wells. So I'm very confident we'll find water. And we have and managing your own utilities. So that's what living off the grid actually means. And
Hmm.
that's the lifestyle that you live at home. It doesn't have to necessarily be your entire lifestyle. So
Right.
we have our kids in school. I
Hmm.
drive them down into town for school every day. I do have dreams of maybe one day building one day, there's that phrase again, um, which is slippery slope for me because I'll probably do it. But
It's the thing that cracks it open.
I know, maybe we could build a schoolhouse and like have a forest school. So in the back of my mind, it's there. But right now, I have them in really amazing schools down in town. I do have a greenhouse and we supplement, but we still shop at the grocery store. We have a refrigerator that runs on solar,
Hmm.
and I still shower. I take care of my just because you live off the grid doesn't mean you have to be bathing in the river and building mud
Right.
huts. It's literally living off grid means being in charge of your own utilities. And I feel like it's really empowering too at the same time because if the power grid goes down in your city, which has happened with windstorms and snowstorms, we still have power because
Right.
we have our own system. So our
Right.
fridge is always going to be on. And
Yep.
if anything were to happen with any of that stuff, I find it, that's why I call it living off grid is the next modern luxury
Right.
because it's empowering to be in charge of your own systems. And it is a luxury because there's investment and there's time and energy and resources it takes because pretty much you're paying for your lifetime utilities up front.
Right.
So
Yeah,
there's
that's a good point.
that
Right.
trade-off. Oh, my huge solar system, or I'm drilling 700 feet for my well. Those are big expenses. So it can kind of like have that luxury feel. But once you have it, then you're set.
Right.
And I truly believe living off grid will become the next sought out luxury, which is what I talked about in my TED talk because of
Yeah.
that, of getting back
Right.
into nature, living more self sustainable and living, and you said this earlier, harmony with nature, like living in harmony with nature. And that's the way I feel like humanity is supposed to live.
Right. Well, I have found that what happens to most of us is we subject ourselves to situations where our nervous systems just get hijacked, one thing after the next, right? And when our nervous system is hijacked and we go to that place of anxiety, well then you can't manifest. Then you're not in being the creator of your life, you're being the reactor of life.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're reacting to the things around you and then making decisions from that point, they're not going to be authentic with your heart and your soul. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to be a fraction of yourself is going to be
Yeah.
showing up. And so it's really about how do you really authentically show up in the world? And then how do you create the bridge to get there? And the bridge is the journey. I mean, I don't think the bridge ever really truly ends because you continue to keep massaging it. And I find that when you dream a little bit, it cracks it open and then the dreams get bigger and bigger
Oh
because
yeah.
you start to realize you
Yeah.
can do it
Yeah. The bridge
and
is the
you're
gift.
there.
I think the bridge is the gift because that's where you are going to
Mm,
change.
right.
That's where you change because I showing up from like new mom, fresh off the pageant stage to living the gritty dirt road lifestyle. I mean, there was an arc that had to happen. And the only way that growth happened wasn't that okay, this is who I
For
am now,
sure.
this is what I want, and then meeting, and then I find myself on the bridge again right now with this is
Mm.
where I am with building my personal residence. I want to build this campus. So I
Yep.
have this three-phase system. So we start with phase one or pre-launch, then phase one. So I like have the plan, but again, I know by the time I'm done with phase three, I'm not going to be the same person I am right now.
No,
It'll be
there's
the
no
end of
way
my
that you can be. Right. And I think the other piece along the way that's important for people is each phase of this giving your gratitude, because it's
Hmm.
all about your vibration. And
Oh
I always say that your thoughts, your words, and your feelings are your vibration or your magnet to what you're creating in your life. So if
yeah.
you keep telling yourself you can't in your head, well then you won't.
Yeah.
Right? If you think that okay, it's out of the box and it's a possibility and going, yeah, I don't really know how this all is going to turn out, but this is what I want. Like,
Hmm.
so, all right, show me the next right step. I always
Yeah.
tell people, just show me the next right step. And the next right step just unfolds. And
Hmm.
it's the acceptance of that next right step. That's the second step I always walk people through is first, what's the dream? And the next is you have to accept whatever arises or you suffer,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And
And I
and
feel
and I'm
my ups
sure
and
you've
downs
had
in there.
right. And I'm sure you've had setback. Like, well, you just talked about like the 3.5 years in an RV, longer than you
Hmm.
thought. But you guys are gonna feel like the profound sense of happiness that'll come when you're in your triangle home,
Hmm.
right? Like that's amazing.
Oh, I
It's
know. Yeah.
right. And
That
and when the
that's that
well gets
thing.
dug,
Oh, I know. Well, it makes you so again, that gratitude, it makes you grateful for the little things.
right.
The first year, we didn't have solar. We had a
Mhm.
generator. So I
Right.
lived without outlets for most of the day because the outlets would only work when the generator was on. So
Ah,
it really brought me down to the basics. Like, do I really need what do I really need? Do I really need outlets? No, I really don't. What and then it kind of builds on itself when we got our solar array. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have power all the time. I can use I was like, look at this. Look, I can plug stuff in. And it's stuff you take for granted in the city.
yeah. Right.
And each thing just like it builds on that gratitude. So yeah,
Well,
totally
and
agree.
you're building a muscle for the impact that you're making to society, right? Like over time, you're going to see what that is. I think a real big part of what you and your husband have done is shown people that there's possibility no matter what your reality is.
Hmm.
You're proving possibility, that
Yeah, I guess
anything is
so.
possible. And that's
I get
beautiful.
yeah, I can see
And
that
thank
because
you for that
literally.
because that's a gift that you are giving so many people and even sharing your story today with me because you've created the bridge. You've done it. You're 4 years later and so going, that wasn't so bad. Like it wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be, but it wasn't so bad. And
Mhm.
think about how healthy it is to be on a mountaintop during a pandemic. Well, you're not near anybody.
Timing of it all was also very empowering, honestly, because we were the closest neighbors miles away. And then we built up some food storage and we had our greenhouse. And so there's always that thought in the back of my mind. I'm like, gosh, if it's like it turns into the zombie apocalypse, we're fine up here. Like we'll
Yeah,
be
you're
fine,
totally fine.
you know? And so, and again, that goes back to that luxury mindset for me, anyways. I feel like that is my idea of luxury is having my own utilities, having my own resources, being self-sustainable and raising my kids in that environment and with that same mindset.
Right, right. Rachel, can you share your website again? Because I think people,
Mhm.
we become the things that we read and the information we digest, and I think it's important for people to know dig into more of your story. So, can you share that with people?
Absolutely. So you can find everything on croninmountain.com. Cronin's my
Mm.
last name, CRONIN mountain.com.
That's awesome. And I'm just going to share here that my book, Awaken Your Wealth, you can get it for free, awakenyourwealthbook.com. I paid for the book printing and I just asked you to collaborate and pay for your own shipping. And again, don't forget to hit that subscribe, like, and notification bell. Why? Because I'm going to help you get to a life that you absolutely love because I know you can get there. Rachel, thank you so much for joining today. I appreciate you. Namaste.
Namaste.